Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we humbly bow before Thee at this time to give Thee thanks for the opportunity that we have to be able to meet once again with those who lack precious faith to continue our study of Thy Word. We pray as we go into our study this evening that Thou will be with each of us, open our hearts and our minds to a better and clearer understanding of the gospel message. We thank Thee for Thy many blessings and care, and pray that Thou will forgive each of us of our sins and shortcomings, and if it be Thy will, at the return of Thy Son to this earth to establish Thy kingdom, that each of us might receive a part therein. In Christ's name we humbly approach Thee. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. So I think we'll be able to finish this evening. And then the other announcement is for the month of July, I'm going to be in like a bunch of different places. I don't know when the 4th falls, but I'm pretty sure that's going to interrupt the first week.
Yeah, it's right there on top of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to be in Onesimus the 7th through the 13th. I'll be up in New Jersey, so I won't be able to do it. And then the week of the 22nd to the 26th, I have to go to DC for our IRS conference. And then the 29th through the 2nd is Canadian Bible School, and I have to teach there. So I think we're just going to have it the next 2 weeks in June, and then skip until August. But tell me from your all side if there's any conflicts for August.
Last week of August, Lynn and I will be away in the first week of September.
Okay. Is anybody else gone?
Yeah, starting the week of July 20th, we're in New Mexico Bible School.
Okay.
Sister Nancy and I are at the Canadian school.
Okay.
That'll be the first week in August, and you'll be there also, right?
Yep, I'm teaching there.
Right.
First period. So do you all want to wait until September to pick it back up? Since everybody's traveling?
Sure. We're out the first week of September, but other than that, you can pick up on the 12th.
Okay. So do we want to say September 12th is when we'll resume? But we'll still have the rest of June, but then it will stop for July and August and pick up the 12th of September. Is that okay?
That sounds good.
That's fine.
All right. Yeah, I mean, there's always the summer ones where it's really hard to get people together. So anyway. So appreciate it. So I'll put it out in a text as well that we're going to be stopping at the end of June and picking up the 12th of September. Okay. All right.
I probably won't be here next week.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Well, we'll miss you. We'll weep lugubriously for your absence. Seriously. Okay. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started now. But if there's any other news, let me know. I know I'm going to the funeral tomorrow for Alan Michael down in Powhatan. And then the other piece of news was I would love it if you all could attend, but we're doing our summer cookout here at my house on Saturday from 6 to 9. And we're just reading stuff from the Bible based on summer and light. So if you would like to participate, we'd love to have you, especially you, Patsy, and Betty, and Jerry, and Pinkstons, and the Bostonians. So if you can come, I'd be grateful. Okay.
Thanks.
So that's Saturday, was it the 14th? What day is today?
Yeah.
Saturday,
The 15th.
Saturday the 15th. And it's from 6 to 9. And it's a cookout. Perry Saunders is doing all the grilling outside, and a bunch of other people are bringing food. But Part of the reason I want you to come is it's a good preaching effort because I have Jewish neighbors who come over and they're Messianic Jews and they're really interested. And some other people I've invited and they always have great conversations with people about the Lord. So it's a good preaching opportunity. So now we're going to do the Lord's judgment is like thunder and lightning. So today the mystique of the Lord's thunder and lightning striking down his enemies seems far-fetched, like a mythical legend or like a superstition of the overly religious. There is real historic merit to it, however, and I never knew this till I did this study. In key reference passages in the Old Testament, the book of Job, there are many references to the Lord's anger and wrath of judgments emanating from the divine in the form of thunder and lightning. Job counsels his friends with the following message, and it was his other friends. I don't think I would have taken any stock, but anyway. By his breath the skies became fair. His hand pierced the guiding serpent, and these are but the outer fringe of his works. How faint the whisper we hear of him, and who can understand the thunder of his power? So I wish he'd strike down all snakes with lightning right now. But anyway, boy, it went backwards. Okay, there we go. In Job 36, Elihu responds to Job's comment about lightning and thunder and how it awakens all forms of creation. The reaction to it is unmistakable. So I get a reader for that one.
Okay. Let's start with Sister Nancy and Brother David tonight.
Okay. Job 36, 27 to 33. He draws up the drops of water, which distill as rain to the streams. The clouds pour down their moisture, and abundant showers fall on mankind. Who can understand how he spreads out the clouds, how he thunders from his pavilion? See how he scatters his lightning about him, bathing the depths of the sea. This is the way he governs the nations and provides food in abundance. He fills his hands with lightning and commands it to strike its mark. His thunder announces the coming storm. Even the cattle make known its approach.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this last time that even the animals know what to do in a storm and to disappear. So this one makes it sound a whole lot more like lightning strikes the mark and it's not random as we might have guessed. That he uses it specifically. And we're going to see better proof than even Job about that accuracy. So this is my own commentary, and it's just like, I think we talked about this last week or no, I can't remember. The mystery in watching the gathering winds and precipitation, the clouds forming, becoming a storm. Hardly anyone can resist its arrival, the landscape of the departure. And I think I was telling you guys that when I was growing up, one of the things you would see is the turning of the leaves, you'd see the disappearing of the mountain ranges. And you see that one more, which is called I think it's called the Perkinsey shift, which is everything turning green. So I think we did cover that part of that.
Lynn and I laughed the other night. We were coming home as the storm was approaching. He said, "There's your childhood reminder," as all the trees, leaves were turning upside down. I said, "Look out, it's coming."
Oh, did you all get something last night?
Oh, the other night, yeah, the storm came.
We didn't get anything. That's terrible. All right, so can I get a reader for Job chapter 37? And this is God talking to Job and his judgments, how he uses his weather for his purposes.
Brother Dave, is it large enough for you to see, or do we need to get someone else?
I think I can make it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My
Sir.
heart pounds at this and leaps from my chest. Just listen to this thunderous voice and the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He lets it loose beneath the entire sky. His lightning to the end of the earth. Then there comes a roaring sound. God thunders with his majestic voice. He does not restrain the lightning when his rumbling voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things that we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, fall to the earth, and the torrential rains, his mighty torrential rains, serve as his sign to all mankind, so that all men may know his work. The wild animals enter their lairs and stay in their dens. The windstorm comes from its chamber, and the cold from the driving moisture. He scatters his lightning through them. They swirl about, turning round and round at his direction, accomplishing everything he commands them over the surface of the inhabited world. He causes this to happen for punishment, for his land, or for his faithful love.
And I think that's the key element at the end, is that sometimes it's being done as a punishment and sometimes it's done out of faith and love. So he certainly has command over it. And with all the sciences that are out there, you got biology and chemistry, and you got physics and so many different things, so many wonderful fields that are opening up even wider. Meteorology is one of the most difficult ones because, you know, it's well beyond sitting down with charts and graphs, like even when I was in school, we used to do to talk about the weather. They're using computer modeling. There are thousands of servers just dedicated for the space that you need to do the number crunching to figure out what's going on. And it's never easy because you're doing everything in 3D and around a sphere, and it's just constantly changing. So what I've seen is like such inaccuracy in the predictions, and it seems like they can't predict fast enough. Like however much the computer modeling is doing, it still can't keep up with what God is doing. And I think he's increasing the rate of speed on everything. And every state says the same thing, you know. You move to Texas. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, it'll change. You don't like the weather in Maine, they say the same thing. You know, every state is acting like that's their own phrase. But in fact, we're seeing this rapidity of change so much everywhere that they can't even predict it. So anyway. Do we read this one? Because it's not really Bible commentary, or do you want somebody else to read it?
It's up to you. It's Sister Fonda's turn.
Oh, hey Fonda. Yeah, go ahead, Fonda. You can read this. She's around.
Hold your horses.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're all right. I got
I'm
no
here.
horses. I got lots of lightning and thunder.
I gotta get my glasses.
Yeah, that's important.
Amazingly, no biblical author, character, or witness has any contrary evidence to thunder being the indisputable voice of God, or of lightning as his word and judgments. What is fascinating is that it means two different circumstances, depending on who one is in relationship to the thunder and lightning. For the righteous, it is assurance of his faithful love. To the wicked, it is the sound of punishment. In the end, the Lord questions Job about these miracles and peculiarities of weather to find if Job has any answers as to how the earth was formed and is operated. The Lord himself states that he reserves his storehouses of snow and hail for times of battle. The lightning, thunder, and winds are his powers to use in the purpose of deriving the outcome of wars and giving recompense to the wicked.
Thank you very much. So it's funny to me because almost every army goes to battle, whether it was World War I, World War II, you know, or the Civil War. They all firmly believe of their own righteousness and that God is on their side, right? God is behind them. And then nobody comes to think two armies that both believe they're right and that God is on their side are about to fight each other. And then I was like, who's really right? And it's like, is the outcome of the war the final disposition on this? And it's funny to see because in the book of Judges, at the last 3 chapters, you got all the tribes of Israel coming up against Benjamin. And I guess they were confident that they would win because Benjamin was in the wrong and they were so wicked. But in 2 attempts, the Benjamites won. And you're like, what in the world is going on? So, but there's lots of famous battles. The only one thing I wanted to illustrate, have you all familiar with with the guy who played George Patton? George Patton was played by George Scott. Anyway, so George Patton during World War II, had won the North African campaign, then the Italian campaign, and then he was about to fight the Germans, and it was in northern Germany, I believe, and they had bad weather and slogged it through in mud. And he called the army chaplain and told him, I want you to write me a prayer for good weather. And he's like, what? He says, I want you to write me a prayer. I want you to pray to God for good weather. And I want you to put it on a card and give it to every single one of the thousands of soldiers by tomorrow morning. And they all thought he was crazy. And he literally printed that prayer on cards, gave it to every single soldier, and they were the soldiers were to pray about it. And they had the weather they needed for the next day. So I was like, that's pretty impressive that, he actually acknowledged God's presence and did what he had to do to get it done. So there's lots of situations like this. So I'll turn this one over for another reader, Job 38. And this is God again talking to Job.
Is Brother Mike with us tonight?
I'm sorry, he's not here.
Okay. Totally we miss him. All right, so we're over to Sister Betty and Brother Jerry. Whichever the two of y'all would like to read it first.
Have you entered the storehouses of the snow or seen the storehouses of the hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to the place where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain and a path for the thunderstorm, to water a land where no one lives, an uninhabited desert, to dissatisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass? Does the rain have a father? Who fathers the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens when the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen?
So the Lord covers a lot in here, but he's basically saying, you all don't even notice when I cut a path for the rain to water the desert. No one's there to see it, but I do it. You're not there in the desolate places when I make the grass sprout. And I, store up all this for mankind. And you all don't even know where it comes from. So it's a lot to think about, and we'll see more in just a moment. So God confronts Job with the storm of challenging and knowledge and authority concerning thunder and lightning. God compares his voice to thunder and the ability to unleash his fury and wrath on the proud. So I have another reader for Job 40.
Okay. Brother Jerry, are you able to read?
Yep, Job 40. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? Do you have an arm like God's, and can your voice thunder like his? Then adorn yourself with glory and splendor, and clothe yourself with honor and majesty. Unleash the fury of your wrath. Look at all who are proud and bring them low. Look at all who are proud and humble them. Crush the wicked where they stand. Bury them and all the dust together. shroud their faces in the grave.
So he makes it very clear that he has the ability to do this, and we always try to put God on an equal footing with mankind, and we're not. The righteous and the wicked try to do this, and it's not even possible. So another thing to consider is that once the Philistines came against Israel, Samuel made intercession for them and asked for them to purge all foreign gods from them, including Asherahs, Baals, and other foreign gods, so the Lord would hear them. So here is that prayer in 1 Samuel chapter 7, verses 5 through 12. So part of it's on this slide, part of it's on the next. So whoever the reader is can do both, if that's okay.
Okay, Sister Joanne, you're up, please.
Once, when the Philistines came against Israel, Samuel made intercessions for them and asked for them to purge all foreign gods from them, including Ashtoreth, Baal, and other foreign idols, so that the Lord would hear them. 1 Samuel 7, 5 to 12. Then Samuel said, assemble all Israel in Mizpah, and I will intercede with the Lord for you. When they intercede with the Lord, when they had assembled the Mizpah, they drew water and poured it out before the Lord. On that day they fasted, then they were confessed. We have sinned against the Lord. Now Samuel was serving as leader of Israel at Mizpah. When the Philistines heard that Israel had assembled at Mizpah, the rulers of the Philistines came up to attack them.
So this picture really should be on the next slide, because I just wanted you to get what was happening, but it did grant them the victory. Next. All right.
When the Israelites heard of it, they were afraid because the Philistines, they said to Samuel, do not stop crying out to the Lord, our God, for us, that he may rescue us from the hand of the Philistines. Then Samuel took a suckling lamb and sacrificed it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. He cried out to the Lord on Israel's behalf, and the Lord answered him. While Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to engage Israel in battle. But that day the Lord thundered with loud thunder against the Philistines and threw them to such a panic that they were routed before the Israelites. The men of Israel rushed out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines, slaughtering them along the way to a point below Beth-kar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin. He named it Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped us.
Yeah, so it's really significant. That's why I love this painting, because it actually shows the Philistines being struck in the other camp. It just doesn't show Samuel doing much except sizzling onions. He's supposed to be sacrificing a lamb. But anyway, but it gave them the victory, and literally your Lord used the lightning to strike against the Philistines until they were subdued. And then Samuel further put up a monument, named it Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped us. So pretty significant that this took place. A lot of people don't realize that it was the lightning that took people out. And you see in many different battles, it says the trees killed more than anything else in the battle. And that one's certainly the case. So we can get another reader for the slide.
Sister Patsy, please.
The Lord used his power over the heavens to rout the Philistines with loud thunder, and the Israelites subdued them from Mizpah to Beth-kar. Similarly, when the Philistines had possession of the Ark of the Covenant, which they had captured in battle, God afflicted their people with the Black Death, tumors, and rats. The Philistines had been contemplating destroying God's people, but God thundered against them with his thunderous voice.
Yep. So when the Ark of the Covenant was there, it went through 2 of the 5 cities. I think they're going to bring it to Ekron, and Ekron was smart enough to go, "Oh no, 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 do not bring it here." I think that it was the Black Plague because it brought rats and tumors. So the fleas are on the rats; they bite the humans, and they give them this Black Death or the bubonic plague, which makes your lymph nodes swell up and they harden, and then basically you die in a matter of 24 to 48 hours. So it's pretty fast. But they saw that, so they made an offering. And again, they did not open the ark. They had it, they put it in the temple of their god Dagon, but they didn't open it up, which the Israelites did. And depending on which version you read, 50,070 people died. But that's the high estimate, and the low estimate is something else. But all these people looked into it. From Beth Shemesh, that was the town. So they made these gold rats and gold tumors to accompany the ark, not to go in the ark, but to accompany the ark as an offering to appease the God of Israel, and sent it back. I've always wanted to know what happened to these things. Yeah. So on another occasion, Samuel asked God to send thunder as a punishment on his own people when they asked for a king to replace him. And this is what's so astounding, is that nobody remembers that this thunder and lightning judgment came against them after they asked for Saul. So I'll let somebody finish reading the slide. So read the 2nd bullet and 3rd bullet.
1 Samuel chapter 12. Now then, stand still and see this great thing the Lord is about to do before your eyes. It is not what harvest now. It is not wheat harvest now. I will call on the Lord to send thunder and rain, and you will realize what an evil thing you did in the eyes of the Lord when you asked for a king. Then Samuel called on the Lord, and that same day the Lord sent thunder and rain. So all the people stood in awe of the Lord and of Samuel. People all said to Samuel, "Pray to the Lord your God for your servants so that he will not die. For we have added to all our other sins the evil of asking for a king." In 1 Samuel 12 is
replete.
Yeah, I couldn't read it, sorry. It's replete with the rebellious history of Israel's ancestors during the Exodus through to the times of Joshua and Judges. God chose this moment through Samuel to reveal his wrath from the sky.
Yeah, so you'll have to help my memory because I'm not in agriculture, but there's the wheat harvest, the barley harvest, and let's see, wheat, barley, and rye, or something else. I can't remember. So I don't know whether wheat is first or last. I thought the barley harvest was earlier, but this would have been pretty bad. You don't want bad weather during the harvest, because it can ruin everything. So,
there's different kinds of wheat harvests. You actually can plant the winter wheat, like at the end of the season,
okay.
and it becomes available in the spring when it comes up. So if you were to have just put in all your other wheat and you're ready to harvest it and you're ready to put in your winter wheat, and now all this terrible weather comes and monsoons and washes everything away.
Yeah.
Now you lose not only the crop you've grown, but the propensity, the ability to set up for the next set for the spring crop that you want to have in place. So this is pretty bad. The thing that always caught me in these verses that I can't believe I keep reading it everywhere is when the people talk to Samuel and to other people as well, they say, "Pray to the Lord your God."
Yeah.
Why do they insist that it's his God? Why don't they say, "Pray to the Lord our God, help us out"? Is there a hint of maybe a lack of faith here?
Well, they do it to Moses too,
Yes.
at Mount Sinai, and there's like, we don't want to talk to God anymore. From now on, you talk to God and come and tell us what he said.
Yeah.
So man is always trying to limit God's power. He's trying to step back away from him, and they want somebody else to deal with God. You just tell us what you need and we'll do it, but you go talk to him. We'll stand over here. So there is, and you see it in many other places where there's this distancing, but I just think it's amazing that he used thunder and lightning on his own people in asking for a king. So obviously God was pretty displeased. So David calls on the Lord just as Samuel, who anointed him, did, and David sees that God directs his power of thunder and lightning to carry out his burning anger and wrath upon his enemies. And he records this in 2 Samuel chapter 22, verses 7 through 15. So if somebody can read the second bullet, that would be great.
We're back to you, Sister Nancy. Let me know if it's too small.
Okay, no, I think it's fine.
Okay.
We'll see. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I called out to my God. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came to his ears. The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the heavens shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, bolts of lightning blazed forth. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning, he routed them.
Excellent. Thank you. It's an amazing picture that he writes, and it's not in the Psalms, which you would typically find David writing like this. And out of it, you get this incredible image of the Lord riding around on his cherubims.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people, I mean, that's the same cherubims I would assume that were in Ezekiel chapter 1. Mm-hmm. And parting the heavens and having these dark clouds under his feet. So it's really quite a vision. And this is how David sees him and how he scatters his arrows against his enemies and routs his enemies with bolts of lightning. So it's very specific. There isn't this randomness we think to it. And I'll continue from here. So there is an occasion in American history, not American history, English history, where we do, there's so many examples of the Lord's thunder and lightning playing a part in battle, like we read about in Job. So this is the moment that King Edward III vows that he will make peace with the French. And it's a reimage by the painter and historian William Edmund Doyle in 1864. But basically, it's a huge change in the cause of war, and the English remember it in their history. So can I get a reader for this slide?
Okay. Brother David, if it's not too small, if so, let me know.
We'll give her a try. In
Thank you, sir.
April 1360, the English army was struck by one of the worst weather-related disasters in its history. Edward III's force of 10,000 men, the most powerful army yet mustered for the 100-Year War, rampaged across France. The French army took shelter behind the walls of Paris and refused to do battle. So Edward decided to besiege Chartres. On the 13th of April, Easter Monday, a sudden and intense thunderstorm struck the English camp. Violent winds tore apart tents and overturned wagons. Lightning flashed down, killing several men. Panic set in when giant hailstones started falling, causing the horses to scatter along with freezing rain. It seems as if the world was come to an end, wrote the French coroner Jean prostrate. The hailstones were so large as to kill men and beasts, and the boldest were frightened. King Edward is said to have fallen to his knees and prayed as the storm raged. The army reportedly lost more than 1,000 men to the combined effects of lightning, hailstones, stampede, and sudden chill, more than been killed at the Battle of Crecy. 3 weeks later, Edward, much humbled, according to, and I'm sorry, I can't see the bottom of the screen.
I think it's Froissart, signed a peace treaty with the French. In it, he renounced his claim to the French throne and ended the first phase of the war, all because of a storm. So this is just one example. There are many, many more about how the weather affected different battles in warfare. But this was a big game changer because the French and the English always hate each other and are always fighting. And this time the English were trounced.
I
So
imagine that Patton studied war and the history of all these wars. That's probably why he wanted to pray for good weather.
yeah, you're right about that, Fonda, because he knew only one person was in charge of that, and he went to the authority. So it's probably the only time his soldiers were allowed to break the chain of command.
Ooh, goodness.
So, I'll get a reader for the lightning and thunder of God, and just so here David supplies believers with a complete assessment of thunder and lightning and compares it to the Lord's burning anger. His coming, fire coming from his mouth and smoke from his nostrils. He compares the dark storms as a foothold for God's feet, and lightning thunder as the arrows that scatter the defeat of his enemies. Isaiah predicts the demise of the city of David, the Jerusalem or Aer, in chapter 29 as part of the judgments, makes allusion to thunder and lightning. Isaiah 29, 5-6 says, "But your many enemies will become like the fine dust, the ruthless hordes like blown chaff. Suddenly, in an instant, the Lord Almighty will come with thunder and with earthquake to make noise, with windstorm and tempest and flames of devouring fire." So he has control of all these things. Man keeps forgetting that he does, and he shows his power among the nations. So I get a reader for the slide.
Okay, Sister Betty, please.
There are too many examples of God's word coming down like thunder and his judgment as lightning to enumerate herein, and the evidence is overwhelming. Isaiah uses the same literary device in the next chapter and accompanies his wrath with fire, cloudbursts, and hail. Isaiah 30:30, the Lord will cause people to hear his majestic voice and will make them see his arm come down from raging anger and consuming fire, with cloudburst, thunderstorm, and hail.
Yep. And we're going to see it in the end times. And people are going to be like, why are we having all this weather? So does the bad weather today, what does it get blamed on?
It's just a natural thing.
Global warming.
Thank you, Matthew. There you go. It's all global warming's fault. We got somebody to blame. That's all we need. So they say all these intensity and storms, the sea risings, all this stuff is because the earth is warming up because of carbon, gas emissions, and we all need to buy electric cars and da 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 da. It goes on and on. The people who don't know is that the carbon footprint's going to increase if they use electronic vehicles, because it drains the whole city of power to do it, and people are already going to be overusing electricity for their air conditioning. So if you think about it, I just want to propose this to you. Man keeps building where he shouldn't. Okay, we build where we want to build because we can. The cities out west like Phoenix and Las Vegas and so many places in Southern California They only exist, even Florida only exists because they have a constant, steady source of electricity. If that were taken out by a solar flare, by a volcano, by thunderstorms, by whatever, it would immediately be evacuated because nobody can live there with the heat. So most of the time from like March all the way to October, Phoenix is above 100 degrees. It's between 100 and 120 degrees the whole time.
Yeah.
And I asked people, I was like, why do you live there? It's like, we don't worry about it. We just live indoors the whole time. I was like, what's the point of being in Arizona then? You could live in Minnesota for that amount. So if they were to lose power or the power grid failed where they were, you'd never see a city become a ghost town so fast. So it's a matter of time when the Lord returns, all these creature comforts are probably going to go away and people are going to wonder what happened to this city. Yes, Walter.
So in relation to what you're saying, I always smile inwardly and say to people, why is the way it is? I said, well, if you read the scriptures, God already told you when, as the end times come, the earth shall burn with fervent heat. Duh, he's beginning the process.
Yep.
And you better be prepared because this ain't the heat that's coming yet.
Exactly. So that's 2 Peter 3.
Mhm.
And that's a great passage to use when people are talking to you about global warming. And you can say, well, the Lord did predict this about 2,000 years ago, that this was going to happen. He destroyed the first earth with water. The second earth is going to be destroyed by fire. So just keep 2 Peter 3 in your back pocket. And it's not as a tool of leverage to make people feel bad. It's something that you can say, well, it was long before, Clinton and Gore were in office that global warming was an issue, because we were told it was coming.
See, what's interesting is God sees the beginning from the end. And I like to remind people that. He already looked ahead and saw what the ways of man were going to be. He says, look what they're doing. They're going to cause everything to go out of whack. The ecosystem to go out of whack. Look at the heat and things are going to burn. So what does he say? The earth shall burn with fervent heat. He's making a statement of fact. He doesn't have to directly cause it himself because he's already seen what's going to happen.
Mhm.
And that's what we have to keep reminding people. God has already saw what's going to happen. It's not even a prediction on his part. He's saying, I've already seen it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to warn you in this benevolent way that what's going to happen. Be prepared.
Right. It's absolutely true. So we may all be living in northern Canada by the end of this. Can I get a reader for the slide?
Yes, Billy.
Let me interject here too. So if you go back in history, since we're talking about this, on December 25th, 1776, remember George Washington, going across the Delaware River, that was a result of an unforeseen storm that came up, and it helped him in the Battle of Trenton. And that's been detailed in a lot of American history. That was one of the turning points of the war, is that weather actually benefited the revolutionaries, let's say, of the US and caused the end, the destruction finally or the giving up of England against the US, what would become the US, all because of weather. Now, even George Washington, who was leading the group, didn't know about this weather event that was going to happen. But it almost looks like, as the one writer put it, looks like God's providence involved here. And that's part of the developing of the United States, if you look at it from the war standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think there was something also that happened at the Battle of the Virginia Capes, and the surrender at Yorktown on October 19th, 1789. So there's a lot of different good incidences, but I might want to add that one about the crossing at Trenton, because I don't think I had that one. And there's so many where the Lord does intercede, and it changes the outcome completely from what it was going to be. Okay, who we got for reader?
Okay, let's see. We got Billy.
Am I the next reader?
Oh yeah, we're waiting on you to read. Yes.
In speaking of drinking the cup of the Lord's wrath, Jeremiah speaks to Israel and warns them to tell all the surrounding nations that this will happen to those that hate Israel. Now prophesy all these words against them and say unto them, the Lord will roar from on high. He will thunder from his holy dwelling and roar mightily against this land. He will shout like those that tread the grapes, shout against all who live on the earth. The tumult will resound to the ends of the earth, for the Lord will bring charges against the nations. He will bring judgment on all mankind and put the wicked to the sword, declares the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Look, disaster is spreading from nation to nation. A mighty storm is rising from the ends of the earth. At that time, those slain by the Lord will be everywhere, from one end of the earth to the other. They will not be mourned or gathered up or buried, but will be like dung lying on the ground.
Yeah, so I know prophecies don't repeat themselves, but this is certainly something I think we can expect when the Lord returns, because there's going to be so much death and devastation when he returns. So, any thoughts on that verse or paragraph you read, Jerry?
Yeah, so, there's an interesting contrast here, and you're probably going to get to this, so I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead. But,
Oh.
When the Lord was crucified, remember there were dark clouds and thunderings and earthquakes and lightnings, and the people were very afraid. I mean, you read that they were really afraid of what was happening. And so here was God's anger being shown to the people for the death of his son. And now when his son comes back, the same sort of thing's going to happen. Thunder, lightning, wind, anything that will put fear in their hearts. The Lord is coming.
Yeah, I think that his crucifixion's a microcosm of what's going to happen when he returns. You're going to have the sun, moon, stars being darkened. You're going to have the earthquake. You're going to have all these same essential elements that you saw at the crucifixion at his return.
The dead rising.
The dead rising.
It's all perfect. You're right on the cosmos there. That's
Yeah.
a pretty picture.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait till it happens. So lastly, the prophet Joel predicts the Lord will use thunder to direct his army and his forces beyond number. And he does speak about the last days. He will judge the nations in their hatred of his people, and they will come into judgment before him. So I'm going to get a reader from Joel 2.
Okay, let's see. Sister Fonda, your turn.
Lastly, the prophet Joel predicts that the Lord will thunder to direct his army, and his forces are beyond number. He will judge the nations for their hatred of his people, and all will come into the judgment before him. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sound the alarm on my holy hill. Let all who live in the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. It is close at hand, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness, like dawn spreading across the mountains. A large and mighty army comes, such as never was in ancient times, nor ever will be in ages to come. Before them fire devours, behind them a flame blazes. Before them the land is like the Garden of Eden, behind them a desert waste. Nothing escapes them. They have the appearance of horses. They gallop along like cavalry.
So the Lord has prepared a day when he's going to do his recompense. And mankind was like, let the Lord come back, let us see the Lord. And Amos is the one who came across with the term, the day of the Lord. And in his description, there's nothing pretty about it. It's a day of destruction, a day of death, a day of darkness and judgment. So we as believers hope we're going to be removed from the earth or taken somewhere to escape the wrath that's coming on the earth. And that there is I think a psalm that basically says, hide away for a little while the Lord's wrath passes over the land. Mm-hmm. And certainly the righteous have had to deal with this in the past, where Noah was on the ark to escape the wrath that was coming on the earth. Abraham was far away from Sodom and Gomorrah when it was destroyed. There was the Passover where everyone stayed in their house and did not come out because the wrath of the Lord was actively moving in Egypt. And they didn't want to be a part of it. So there's lots of cases where the righteous have to go into hiding while the Lord executes his wrath on earth. We may be the generation that sees that again if he doesn't take us first. Yes, Walter.
So your study is bringing a thought to my mind as I was pondering a lot of things you said. So we see the last days, and we see the armies upon the hill preparing to march. You'll probably know from your stint with the Navy and all those other guys that the armies they succeed by being able to have a communication between one another that nobody else can understand, right? So here in your mind, you see all this thundering is happening on the battlefield, and they hear thunder and lightning, and they're like, "What is all that?" But it's really the voice of God speaking to his troops.
Yeah.
You go there, you go there. And they have no clue that it's directions from God saying, go forth and come.
Yeah,
It's
that'd
an
be
amazing thought that you bring out there.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Because the Lord will, they won't be able to translate or decode God's voice
No.
from the thunder.
Yeah.
Also, that's the thing about, the sun, moon, and stars being darkened. I'll really quickly go into this. We've had a lot of seismic action over the last, 20, 25 years. You've seen a lot more volcanoes go off, and seismology goes along with volcanology in that earthquakes and volcanoes trigger one another. An earthquake can trigger volcanoes can trigger earthquakes. Anyway, it's the volcanic ash that is so different. So Mount Redoubt in Alaska has gone off several times. It shuts down airline travel to Alaska all over the place. It's now right near Anchorage. The one that's going off right now in Iceland is not a particular threat, but the one before, I think it was 2010, 2005, had a huge long name. It shut down all air traffic in Europe for a month. They said they hadn't had that kind of air traffic complete arrest since World War II, since the Blitz. Nobody could travel by plane. So you imagine all of the various volcanoes on Earth going off at the same time. It could shut down air traffic internationally if the dust, plume clouds go over. Even in 1980, when Mount St. Helens went off, it put the junk of all this ash and smoke into the stratosphere. I mean, it went 16 miles up. It traveled around the Earth in 2 days. So it was very powerful. I don't know if you all remember it, but there was some beautiful sunsets in 1980 with how red they were and colorful because of all that volcanic ash going in the atmosphere. Here's the other thing. When it lands and it gets wet, it's heavier than concrete.
Yes.
And it can destroy roofs and take down buildings. But also, when it's in the atmosphere, it blocks radio waves. Okay? Radio waves, I'll say it again. So satellites would not be able to communicate with us. You won't be able to use your Netflix anymore. We won't be doing Zoom anymore. You'll have to come in person. All of the stuff will shut down. International banking. People who are in school won't be able to do their online classes. We've created such a dependence on everything virtual and cloud-based technologies that the whole world will just completely feel like it's gone back to the Middle Ages when this kind of stuff happens. So just be thinking about it.
I have a question on that, just slide right before. So in verse 2 in Joel that we just read, where it says that this will not happen even in the ages to come, I'm thinking about Revelation where it talks about a rebellion in the latter times. And some brethren have said, well, this is a rebellion at the end of the 1,000 years that comes. But if that's true, it's not like this, okay? Because this one looks like total devastation. Or maybe we're misinterpreting that whole idea of rebellion. I don't know. But there in Joel 2:2, it says that this kind of blackness and clouds and all that we see, mighty armies, this isn't going to happen afterward. After this is over, you won't see that again on the earth. So again, that we could go in a lot of discussion on, but that's an interesting verse, that's all.
I agree.
Yeah. So Walter, what do you want to say about it?
Well, no, I agree with him. I think the idea of when the kingdom age ends, there's this massive revolt is just not really supported in scripture, as some people would say that it is far earlier in the process. Because by then the last enemy destroyed his death, and it's not about war and things like that.
Okay.
But hey, like I said, that's a class for for Revelation.
Which we already had, so it must
We
be
did
answered. Can I get a reader for Joel 2, starting at verse 5?
Okay, let me see where I'm in. Sister Joanne, please.
Okay. Joel 2. With a noise like that of chariots, they leaped over the mountaintops, like a crackling fire consuming stubble, like a mighty army drawn up for battle. At the sight of them, nations are in anguish. Every face turns pale. They charge like warriors. They scale walls like soldiers. They all march in a line, not swerving from their course. They do not jostle each other. Each marches straight ahead. They plunge through the defenses without breaking ranks. They rush upon the city. They run along the wall. They climb into the houses. Like thieves, they enter through the windows. Before them, the earth shakes. The heavens tremble. The sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars no longer shine. The Lord thunders at the head of his army. His forces are beyond number, and mighty is the army that obeys his command. The day of the Lord is great. It is dreadful. Who can endure it?
That from Amos?
That was the end of it, yeah.
Okay.
And I always love that question at the end. Who can endure it all? And of course, the answer is only the righteous who put their faith and trust in God are the ones who can endure it.
Absolutely. And the day of the Lord is the one that was coined by Amos. He's the first prophet to sort of talk about this. So he's thundering from his army, and I think Walter already captured that idea that it's him speaking with his troops.
Mm-hmm.
So the prophet also completes the vision against Israel's enemies who have taunted her, hated her, and sold her children as slaves to faraway nations. This time, the Lord's rancorous lightning will strike them, and terrifying thunder will unhinge them. And these are all the people who've always hated Israel that live all around them, from Syria to Egypt to Lebanon to Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and so many others. So can I get someone to read the third and fourth bullet on the slide?
Sure. Sister Patsy, please.
Joel 3. See, I am going to rouse them out of the places to which you sold them, and I will return on your own heads what you have done. I will sell your sons and daughters to the people of Judah, and they will sell them to the Sebans and nations far away. The Lord has spoken. Proclaim this among the nations. Prepare for war. Rouse the warriors. Let all the fighting men draw near and attack. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weakling say, I am strong. Come quickly, all ye nations, from every side, and assemble there. Bring down your warriors, Lord.
Yeah, so the Lord is looking for his opportunity to deal with them, and he always has. And he's been planning for war a lot longer than they have, and he is ready for battle. We are the generation who very likely will see these things come to pass that are in Joel, Zechariah 14. That's another thing I just kind of wanted to bring up as a sidelight. The pattern of what we have seen with the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas has almost the same elements to it that we thought were unthinkably out of reach for Zechariah 14. It talks about captives. It talks about the women being raped. It talks about people coming in and looting and destroying things. And I'm like, I was like, how in the world are people going to come in at this point and take half the city of Jerusalem and do all these things? But we've just seen it. We've seen a future forecasting of what can happen in Israel. And they are unfortunately a people divided among themselves. They can't agree on what to do. They can't agree on what to do with the hostages. They can't agree going forward. They're always trying to Shanghai the latest leadership that they voted for. It's a very tumultuous environment. And until God is ruling over them, there isn't really going to be any peace. So just something to think about. Now let's go ahead and go to Joel 3. Who's our next reader?
Okay. Let's see. I think, oh, you're down to me now. Okay. Joel 3. Let the nations be roused. Let them advance into the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the nations on every side. Swing the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, trample the grapes, for the winepress is full, and the vats overflow. So great is their wickedness. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near into the valley of decision. The sun and the moon will be darkened, and the stars no longer shine. The Lord will roar from Zion and thunder from Jerusalem. The earth and the heavens will tremble, but the Lord will be a refuge for his people, a stronghold for the people of Israel.
Yeah, so we're seeing these same elements again and again, and the Lord is going to use the full pantheon of his weather tools to deal with these situations. As we can see, men's hearts will be failing them for fear of what is coming on the earth, but it is a righteous judgment. So I think we're almost at the end. No, we have one. Okay. All right, well, we'll stop here for tonight and then pick up tomorrow. And again, it comes from Amos, who talks about the day of the Lord. So we'll pick up next time. Thank you all for participating, and please keep the Michaels family in your prayers, as well as Richard Harrison in Canada. He's had 2 different operations. Pete Washik out in Colorado fell. He has a brain bleed that is so bad it's the size of a golf ball in his head. And because of the pressure on his brain, they basically have had to, tie him down more or less because he's been thrashing. So I just pray for them, because their families are kind of overwhelmed at the moment, and that the doctors will be guided in what they do. So anyway, it's good seeing you all again, and I guess we'll meet next week and the week after, and that will be it for the summer, and we'll pick up September the 12th. Anybody have any other news to share? Well, if you can come for the cookout at my house on Saturday, I would appreciate it. It's from 6 to 9, and it should be really nice. So hope to see you here. And if you want to bring a dish, that'd be great. We'll sign off for tonight, and see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Joe, for class.
Thanks, Walter.
You're
Good night,
welcome.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good
care.
night.
Night.